John,
Eric.
how's it going?
Oh, it's going good. It's going good. How are you?
Great.
Yeah.
I've moved from F to G.
Great.
Yeah.
What is another G word?
Gracious?
Grateful?
Grateful?
I don't know. Sorry. It's late. It's been a long day.
It has been a long day.
It's all good. It's all good.
And a long day topped off with, I don't know if you saw the email from the school.
Just before we got on the call.
Yeah, there was a security incident at the district, which is where the school, for all the schools in the kids' school district. Apparently, all of the student credentials for their Google accounts may have been compromised. So not just their emails, which are usually like their student ID at the district domain. So compromised. So they've locked all the student accounts. They can't have access to their drive, which nowadays, my boy's I have a paper that's on there that's due tomorrow. And so, the email says any assignments that were due tomorrow will be delayed until they can fix the security incident. They're forcing all students to reset their passwords. It's like,
how in the world are they going to do that though? Because they said that all Chromebooks would be locked at 8:30 tonight. And
yep.
And that they'll
so
be
tomorrow. They have to take their Chromebooks to school. So they have to be on the school network to then get their Chromebook unlocked. So it will only unlock if it's on the school network, at which point they will be forced to change their password.
Oh, interesting.
So for the poor kids who are sick,
but they don't have to
unable
form a line of 1,400 people at the office.
No. No, to have some poor IT guy.
I was trying to picture that. I guess maybe I didn't read what was going to happen.
No. And part of that is probably some conjecture on my end is that's my belief as to what they're going to do and my understanding of how Google Chromebooks and Chrome for schools work, which is similar to Chrome for business and Google Workspace for businesses.
Right.
So I still have my free Google Workspace account that every 90 days they email me saying, hey, you should upgrade. Get off this free ride.
And you're like, can I upgrade for free?
Yeah. No.
Why would I do that?
So yeah, they keep tightening you need to log in at least once. You need to, there's all these things you have to do to prove that you're still using it. And it's like, all right, what's on the list this time to prove that I'm still here?
Hoop shall be jumped through.
Exactly.
Okay, just call you a tiger.
Yeah, something.
Yeah, so that is exciting. For some definition of exciting.
It's a lesson. My boy and I had a great conversation about, so how did somebody get all the passwords? Well, here's some likely ways that might have happened. Because there was some kids that were anecdotally texting each other and says, is this why my Chrome browser started popping a bunch of tabs without me doing anything earlier today? It's like, probably. That probably means your account was being accessed.
Not good.
So it was, it was a good educational moment. And then we talked about, here's what you do tomorrow when you go in. And he's like, all right. Because he was worried about, is my paper gone? Is all my stuff that I've been doing on my Chromebook gone? It's like, in theory, no.
Almost certainly
but
not.
Sometimes things happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, you should be fine. So.
Okay. Well,
anyways.
I have not seen or talked to my son since I saw that email, but I'm sure that we will talk about it at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. Well, I had a semi-fun weekend, again, with the air quotes around the fun part, but
semi-fun.
Well, I know I've mentioned that like a couple of years ago we built a yurt out on some
Yeah,
property out
yeah.
there, and you know it's a piece of land that you know we might retire, you know, build a house on someday. I don't know what we're going to do with it, but we have power there. And a couple of years ago, a good number of years ago now, she said, we had a well drilled, but I didn't have power to the well. Blah 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 blah. Like the couple of weeks ago, like maybe a month ago, I basically, my neighbor was doing some work and he put me in touch with the electric company out there. And I was like, you know what? While you're doing that other stuff for him, just trench over to my well, put in the power line that the pump needs. And then I called the plumber who had put in the well literally like 7 years ago. And, and
Remember me?
yeah. Well, I paid them, so like they got paid. They
Yeah,
don't care that it's not
yeah, yeah.
actually been pumping water or doing anything else. Anyway, but so I called them
Exactly.
and I'm like, cool. So and I they knew each other. You know, the gal from the electric contractor and the gal from the plumbing contractor. Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's a small town. They work together. So I'm like, cool. So I'm figuring I'm made in the shade. At some point, I will then have power over to the well and a single water line. I went out and I sunk a 4x4 post where I wanted like a water, you know, outdoor spigot, like a frost-free hydrant. And I figure, you know, that'll at least give me water that works out there. So when we go camping, you know, we won't have to, you know, haul water. And evidently there was a miscommunication. And the miscommunication is that
Huh.
I or some delegate is responsible for putting on a well house on top of the 4x4 concrete pad that they helpfully poured for me before they
Right.
will install the pump. So I did not realize this. So it had sat there for a couple of weeks until the electric contractor called and said, "Hey, we'd kind of like to get paid." And I'm like, "Well, is it done?" And she's like, "I don't know." I'm like, "Well, you and the other gal, like, I'm just tell me when it's all done, and I'm happy to pay." Anyway, so it turns out
Yeah.
I need a well house, and I'm like, "Hey, I thought that when I was there, you know, I could just buy a plastic well covering." And she's like, "Oh no, we don't sell those anymore because you know they didn't last." And I was like, "Okay, how big does it need to be?"
Uh,
Pretty darn big. So I shopped for rocks on you know, fake rocks on Amazon.
Shop for fake rocks. Okay.
I couldn't find any that were big enough, and even the ones that were like really expensive. Anyway, so this whole weekend, it was I'm just gonna like throw up a little thing on there, and
Mm-hmm.
like you know, between my wife and I, we were like, it'd be kind of nice to put a shed up there, and I was like, well, okay, like you could put a shed kind of wrapping the well house, like okay,
Right.
and then it's like the cheapest thing you could buy is like $1,200 at Home Depot or Lowe's. That's basically a plastic
Right. One of
shed
those
that you know I could
pre-built
take but yeah, but like
glue together
rubber,
things.
like a Rubbermaid kind of thing.
Oh,
Yeah,
so Little Tyke's toy house is
yeah,
your will.
but you know 8x8, so like not tiny, but you know a
Okay.
4x4 pad would take up you know a quarter of the interior. And then that's $1,200 and crappy. I'm not a
Yeah.
super fan of that. So we basically like went all the way up to, okay, well, if we put out a real shed, I actually called and I actually went out there and met a guy out there. And then, but looking at the shed that we would wind up putting up, because it would have to be built on site because they'd have to customize it to put a, you know, so that the pump could like come up through the floor. They can't just drop. A
Right.
lot of those shed places, they literally build somewhere else and they just haul to your place and drop it off.
Drop it
But
on
it would have
top.
to be
Yeah.
built on site because of the customization and blah, blah, blah. So and eventually it got up to like minimum of like 4,000 and probably more like $8,000. And I was just like, so I went down to Lowe's and paid $330 worth of material, and I'm building a little well house. Back to it
Okay.
was a very very long way around to get back to the. And we're just going to do something little, and maybe it'll
Right.
be replaced in 5 years, but probably 10. But you know,
Right.
whatever. But the problem is that it
Okay.
will take me a couple of days. So it's about I'm going to say 20% constructed because, of course,
Okay.
you know, whatever. I'm a little overbuilding it
Hmm.
probably, but that was my weekend. It was planning, and then Sunday, executing the initial final recurred plan. I don't know, but pretty crazy. So that was my weekend.
Huh.
But
all right.
We'll see how it goes.
Okay.
Crazy. So anything new with you?
No, not really. More house cleaning this weekend. Nothing really exciting happened this weekend. I have nothing to report.
All right. How about topics? What you got before me?
All right. So, been doing a lot of investigation into email and scams with email lately.
Okay.
And stumbled across this from Talos Intelligence.
Okay.
Cisco Talos. It's spammers abuse Google Forms quiz to deliver scams. Which, okay, so what does that mean? And so basically what Google Forms, anybody can go and create a Google form, right? You just have a Google account, you create a Google form, you can do whatever. But one of the things you can do with Google Forms, and since it is Google, you can automate everything, is you can create a form that takes an email address and then initiate a release the scores feature. And so that will then send an email from Google, so from Google servers, thereby probably bypassing whatever
the DKIM and
your email spam box may be looking for, because it will say like scores released. And so the spammer just automates a form. It doesn't really matter what the form says, sets it up as a quiz, checks the box that says make this a quiz, and then automates just inserting email addresses.
Because one of the form fields is basically the email address that is not verified to be owned by the person entering the form.
Nope. It's just, and then it goes through and you click the button to release all the quizzes to all the emails. So it'll do a mass market spam. And then that spam, the input can be whatever you had as part of the quiz, right? So the quiz can be a spam message. For example, what they looked at is an elaborate cryptocurrency scam that uses this feature. So, the spam, the Google quiz will release and say, click here for your results. And you'll click there and it'll go to, a website with, hey, user, here's cryptocurrency. We've registered your balance, blah, 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 blah. Go, view this button. And then that sends them off to the attacker's website.
Wow.
Right. So the point of this one is really a way to get around spam detection mechanisms, because it comes from Google and the chances are. And so they've got some data in here about, volume for the scammer's website, which has just gone from nothing to, significant amounts of volume. And, here's just yet another way to get around, and kind of an interesting way to get around the whole concept or point of spam checkers, your spam email box. Now, I think there's probably an easy fix on Google's side. And so the article actually goes into a lot more detail about the cryptocurrency scam, which was more kind of like your standard, put your username in here, sign in to your account, blah, 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 blah. And then turns out you're signing into, a scammer account. Anyways, but the interesting part to me was that this was a novel way, I thought, of getting around a, traditional email spam checkers by making the email come from a legitimate source like Google, which probably gets a free pass from spam detection engines. So anyways, that's kind of, it's not a very long one, but that's just kind of, well, the article is actually pretty long because it goes back and forth about the actual cryptocurrency scam, but
right.
I just thought it was interesting
Right.
how they
No,
were
that's
using
tricky abuse.
abusing a form. I'm sure Google can fix that by just requiring a validation on the email
Right.
address or something. But
It's interesting that
anyways,
the chart of the score released emails is, you know, there's a big spike back in February or March. I'm betting that's sort of when this was first abused.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting. Very
Anyways,
interesting. Very interesting. Okay.
there
That's
you
a good
go.
one. Okay. Well, hey, I brought two topics today that are both kind of political-ish in nature or relate to
Mostly politics, our new
government.
bot.
Yeah, mostly politics. Not particularly like partied or anything like that. But the first is a bill that has been submitted, led by our senator, Mr. Ron Wyden, as well
Mm-hmm.
as others. So it's actually the sponsors. There's a Democrat and a Republican in the Senate, and a Democrat and a Republican in the House that are
Bipartisanship? No way. I'm confused.
it does not particularly compute necessarily, but it's called the Government Surveillance Reform Act. So evidently there's a forthcoming expiration of one of the acts that was passed, the Section 702 or whatever that is
Right.
in FISA, that was, I think, instituted around 2008 or something like that.
Okay.
But it's about to expire, and this new bill called the Government Surveillance Reform Act is set to renew but reform some part of it, and it had some specific things in here. I pulled out the things. It's kind of cool. The link that I'll put in here is actually to Senate.gov page that sort of is
Okay.
almost like a press release about the bill. But one of the things that it actually had on it too was a one link summary to the bill too, which is kind of cool. And there's a whole bunch of co-sponsors. So I don't know. We're not currently in the business of passing bills in the United States at the moment, but maybe this has a chance of going through. But here's a couple quotes. So it says it is the Government Surveillance Reform Act will establish new safeguards for government surveillance and accountability for abuses, reauthorize and reform FISA Section 702, establish protections for Americans whose private information is collected under other intelligence authorities, and modernize outdated surveillance laws. That's kind of their executive summary. But here's the quote from Mr. Wyden. Americans know that it is possible to confront our country's adversaries ferociously without throwing our constitutional rights in the trash can. But for too long, surveillance laws have not kept up with changing times, Wyden said. Our bill continues to give government agencies broad authority to collect information on threats at home and abroad, including the ability to act quickly in emergencies and settle up with the court later. But it creates much stronger protections for the privacy of law-abiding Americans and restores the warrant protections that are at the heart of the Fourth Amendment.
Nice.
So one of the big things that it says in here, and I mean it was quoted in a number of the quotes from various senators and representatives and such, is that it protects Americans from what are called warrantless, well, they're calling them here, warrantless backdoor searches. So basically, the law says you have to target a foreign national for collecting information, but as soon as you do, anybody who they talk to in the U.S. can basically be pulled in, essentially. And so that's what a backdoor search is. So especially for people who have family overseas, and it's super easy. If you're talking to anyone overseas, you could be pulled in. So, it says, the reforms include protecting Americans from warrantless backdoor searches, ensuring that foreigners aren't targeted as a pretext for spying on the Americans with whom they are communicating,
Mm-hmm.
extending similar reforms to surveillance activities under Executive Order 12333, which I don't actually know what that is. Sorry. It also limits the acquisition of Americans' information as part of large data sets, requires warrants for surveilling Americans' location data, web browsing and search records, including AI assistants like Alexa and Siri, vehicle data, and by prohibiting the government from purchasing Americans' data from data brokers, which we have talked about on the podcast a number of times.
Yep.
And it says exceptions to ensure the government can continue to use Section 702 for defensive cybersecurity purposes, to assist in locating and rescuing hostages overseas, and emergency provisions in cases where there isn't sufficient time to get a warrant in advance. So that's the what do they say? The ability to act quickly. So there were the press release went on with endorsement by a lot of civil society organizations and other senators and representatives, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know.
Okay.
I haven't read that much, but what I have read, I'm like, cool. Maybe something we can agree on. So I'm cautiously happy. So we'll see. So that's number one.
Okay.
My second article is actually a summary of a article, I believe, from Bruce Schneier on 10 ways that AI will change democracy. And so this is it's interesting, big thinker, but also, kind of smart. But I love I quote, in this short essay, I wanted to move beyond the AI generated disinformation trope and speculate on some of the ways AI will change how democracy functions in large and small ways. And so he does. He lays out 10 different ways, some of which are, I think, actually really appealing, and some of which are like, I kind of squint at and go, oh, maybe. But here's, as I guess you'd expect. So AI as educator, totally makes sense to me. More effective for a student to learn a topic from an interactive AI chat book than from a textbook. AI as sense maker. This also makes total sense. There are many areas of society where accurate summarization is important. Here's the nice analogy, though. It says, today, when constituents write to their legislator, remember, this is like ways that AI will change democracy. Today, those letters get put into two piles, one for and another against, and someone compares the height of the piles. I don't know that that's actually true. That seems
so
apocryphal.
Right on cardstock is what I hear.
Yeah, right. 40 weight paper. So AI can do much better. It can provide a rich summary of the comments, figure out what are unique, what are form letters, and highlight unique perspectives. I have, found the Google. I think I've mentioned that I'm enabled for the AI in Google searches, and the AI summaries at the top are pretty darn relevant. So, third is AI as moderator, mediator, and consensus builder. This is kind of one of my squinting ones. Conversations where AIs serve the role of moderator. Maybe. Maybe. I'm going to go. AI as lawmaker. Also, I'm going to go squint for a bit. But one of the things here was that it says AI could eventually be used to craft loopholes in legislation or to find loopholes in legislation. That certainly makes sense to me. AI as political strategist. Right now, you can ask your favorite chatbot questions about political strategy, what legislation would further your political goals, what positions to publicly take, what campaign slogans to use, et cetera, et cetera. I don't like that one, but because I really feel like it truly takes us to the lowest common denominator. But I mean that path is already being well trodden. But we'll see.
Well, I guess like for the last sort of thing that pops in my head is you have to fundamentally agree on what the facts are before the AI would actually be able to be a moderator or a lawmaker or a political strategist. And we're not, we seem to have differing interpretation of what facts are still in political discourse.
I
So
I concur.
that's what I see here. That would be, I,
Yeah. I'll say, I'll tell you, I
I
mean, this is a little bit of an aside, but I read an article. I'm trying to remember where I read it. I'm sorry, I don't remember what the provenance of it was. I want to say it was the Atlantic or something. Anyway, it doesn't matter because I don't actually know. But it was about the massive incongruity between Americans' perception of the economic state of the country and really of themselves, and the most recent data that shows clear and massive improvements in the last several years with regard to wages, like
yeah.
net value of assets people hold, the obviously employment. I mean, there's the survey they were not survey the data they were speaking to was showed clear and tremendous progress since like I think it was comparing 2019 on
Well, that's just
versus
it.
perception, but perception.
Yeah, I just don't understand how someone who doesn't believe it when a certain side of the aisle says pick your side, pick your issue and pick your side of the aisle. I'm not going to believe it because that's the people saying it. I'm going to magically go, oh, chatbot said it. Oh, AI said it. Okay, I believe it now. I just, that's not how society
life
works.
I
No.
concur. I concur. So,
So
yeah, I'm like I said, some of these are very squintworthy, but the next one after political strategist is AI as lawyer. Evidently, there have been some attempts to try and get some aspects of profession to be done by AIs, but some routine tasks will almost certainly soon be able to be completed. I don't really have a great perspective on that one. AI as cheap reasoning generator. This one I could see. Today AI chatbots are really good at generating persuasive arguments, sometimes hallucinating, but hey,
yeah.
it can take time to write a persuasive argument, and being able to sort of summarize and say, expand on it is what a lot of people are using chatbots today to, write their homework. AI as law enforcer. Automated systems already act as law enforcement in some areas, like speed traps. AI can take this further, identifying people who cheat on tax returns, or perhaps, have stolen their brother's identity and had a second driver's license for 50 years, whatever that article was I had a couple of weeks ago. Because that's certainly coming true already. Let's see. The last couple are AI as propagandist, and then AI as...
Now this one is totally.
It totally is. I was about to rush by it, but yeah, it's that is the trope that he was trying to avoid, but couldn't completely avoid.
Couldn't avoid it.
But yeah. And then AI as political proxy. Now, I don't like this one either. And then it's I don't like versus is it realistic? But, can you imagine an AI voting on behalf of individuals? So you feed the AI
kind of like this one,
your social, economic, political preferences, or have it infer them, and then it votes for you. And he does. He's on the one hand, this could greatly increase voter participation. On the other hand, it would further disengage people from the act of understanding politics and engaging in democracy. Yes,
I do. So I do like the ones like when it gets political season, it's they like the newspapers usually have some kind of quiz. Take this quiz to see who you should vote for, and it basically is doing this. And so if there was. I don't know how an AI would be better at this than me. except for the fact that the claim here is it would vote for you.
Right.
So, because I kind of do those polls and look and see, and that's kind of typically how I decide who to vote for. And sometimes it's like, I knew that. Occasionally it's like, really?
I need to go
should
read
vote
about
for
that person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, anywho.
Yeah. I could
Hmm.
imagine that maybe being a little more, I'll say useful or desirable, perhaps, in, like I think of in Argentina where you're required to vote.
Yeah.
So if your vote is compulsory, then maybe there's more room for automation on the how do you do you make that happen without having to be engaged? I don't know. So anyway, I liked the way he
Interesting.
summarized this. So I don't want to skip the summary, which was that some of these items will soon be possible. Others will remain fiction for many years. But our acceptance of technology's change. Items on the list that we would never accept today might feel routine in a couple years. And here's the thing. A judgeless courtroom seems crazy today, but so did a driverless car a few years ago. Don't underestimate our ability to normalize new technologies. My bet is that we're in for a wild ride. So
that part is true. I think
that exactly right. Exactly right. So, yeah, there you go.
That's
thought provoking and not in the standard stuff. So I liked it.
All right. Well, my something fun.
Okay.
Kind of segues from your last article here.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is in Scientific American. Now, if I were to ask you, do you tell me yes or no? Do people pay better attention today than they did 30 years ago? What would you say? Are people more attentive or pay better attention?
I would
today
say that
or
it
30
is
years ago.
A presumption that people's attention spans today are lower than they used to be.
And that's what this article is about trying to figure out. And which is counterintuitive to me because this one shows that adults' ability to concentrate has increased over the past 20 to 30 years. And there's analysis from a journey of personality and individual differences. So they conducted this research and they kind of centered it around the population's IQ, the intelligence quotient, which has its own issues, but it's measured through standardized testing. So what the test was is the test consisted of 12 to 14 lines of the lowercase letters D and P, depending on the version of the test. And each line had 47 letters. And, there are 1, 2, 3, or 4, I'm kind of summarizing, small vertical markings above and below each letter. And the test taker has to cross out each letter D that has 2 markings as accurately as possible, but as quickly as possible, because it's timed, like 20 seconds per line. So they got to crank through this. And this is a way to measure concentration and performance. And, are you paying attention? And apparently, this performance has increased moderately in adults between 1990 and 2021. Children, however, this stayed roughly the same. So, although children have been working, it says children worked increasingly faster through the years, so they get through the test faster. They made more mistakes, so their attention span is about the same. But adults apparently have improved this. So it's a bit of a longer article, but that was just kind of my. Oh, actually, it's not a bit of a longer article. That's like the whole. There is you can click the full analysis in the journal to see the very long article. This is just a summary.
Right.
The article we'll link here is just a summary, but it's as I was just kind of reading through things, I saw this. I'm like, that sounds. I don't know anyone who would say, yeah, people pay more attention today than they did 30 years ago. So if you're interested in that research, you can go read the very long journal article. But I thought that was an interesting note.
It's always interesting and enlightening, I think, when, people take data to show that our intuitions suck. What what our perception of reality is not necessarily reality. That is just.
I have data that says you're wrong. And you just need to accept it. Yeah. Anyways, there you go.
All right. Well, my something fun. I'm listening to one of these for kind of the second time with my boy, but is a set of books. So I think I mentioned on the podcast at some point in time, like a number of weeks ago, that I was reading something. I was supposed to read a book for you. Or you were asking me if I had read Yumi, I think, or something like that, and I was like, "No, not yet, not yet," because I was reading these other series.
Still reading these,
and I think I had said I'm still in book 8 of 10 or something like that. Anyway, so the author's name is Seth Ring, and so I will put a link to SethRing.com here because I have now read. All 3 of this. Well, sorry, I think he has 4 series out, but I've read 3 of these series, and I really enjoyed them. So the main one that you should start with is called Nova Terra, and the Titan series. So the first book is Nova Terra Titan. There are 10 books in that series, so there's a lot, but they are really enjoyable. And then it turns out that so this is kind of like Cradle, right, where there were 12 books.
Mm-hmm.
But then he's 4 books into the second series with the same characters called The Tower.
Okay.
And I think he's only 3 books in. I think the 4th book hasn't quite come out yet. I'll have to double check that. But super enjoyable. Really, really enjoy them. And so since he had written those and I really enjoyed them, I went and started this other series that he had called Battle Mage Farmer. Which is totally awesome. I totally have been. I enjoyed it. I read the series. I think there's six or 7 books in that series out so far. It's not done yet. But then that's the series. So my boys actually got me into Nova Terra. They were reading Nova Terra before I was, and was like, "Oh, you got to read it. It's really good. It's really good." So I'm like, "Okay, fine." So I read it, and then I went and read Battle Mage Farmer before they did, and I was like, "You kind of got to read this." So we're now so I read them all, and I think now my youngest boy and I think we're in book 3 or 4. Anyway, nice. But the funny thing there is that kind of like Brandon Sanderson, you don't find out until a few books into Battle Mage Farmer, but they are actually set in the same semi-universe. It's not called the Cosmere or something like that, but right. the books are set in the same universe. There is already a minor amount of character overlap, but there is potentially more in the future, which I'm really looking forward to. And I really enjoyed these books. I'm like anxiously awaiting the next book in the Tower series and the next book in Battle Mage Farmer. So there you go. Something fun. I mean, that's right there.
More
14
books.
plus 6. So that's like 20 books. Yeah. So yeah.
All right.
It's good. It's fun. I loved them. So there you go. My something fun.
Right. I think I put this on my read this at some point list already. So.
Yeah, I probably said it to you at lunch or at some other point, but it's totally good. They're all on Kindle Unlimited. So, I mean, I subscribe to Kindle Unlimited. So it's like, they're all quote unquote free for me. Free for me, so long as you spend monthly subscription.
Yeah, that's right.
Yet another monthly subscription. So anyway, enjoy.
Yeah. All right,
my friend.
Well, thanks, John.
Yep. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Yep. I will talk to you later.
Yeah, we'll see you.
Bye.